Hey there, welcome back to the channel where we talk about what actually works on YouTube in 2025, not the recycled garbage that these so-called gurus keep pushing. Now, do you want to know the one thing that will instantly double your YouTube views, even if your content is mediocre? Not your content, because I know your content's great, but if your content was hypothetically mediocre. Well, if you nail this one thing, your videos will get recommended by the algorithm nonstop. You could become quite successful just by doing this one thing well and messing up on just about everything else. So you want to know what it is? It's your thumbnails. And I know this might come across as, a shocking revelation that in order to get people to actually watch your videos, they need to click on them first. Mind-blowing, right? Well, posting a video is the easy part. Getting someone to actually click on your video when it's drowning in a sea of other content, well, that's the hard part because people don't just trust random creators anymore. They're incredibly busy. They have the attention span of a goldfish on caffeine. Seriously. So truly, the actual most important thing if you want to make real money on YouTube is your thumbnails, okay? You could mess up pretty much everything else. In fact, making videos is pretty easy right now with all the AI tools and templates, etc., that's available. It doesn't take a freaking film school graduate like it used to. The number one thing by far is being able to create thumbnails that get clicks. In this video, I'm gonna break down a skill set that's basically been completely forgotten since all of these new age YouTube gurus have taken over, and they've been selling courses with outdated information that used to work in like 2019 but doesn't work anymore. And I'm about to show you my exact thumbnail strategy that has led to me growing a channel to over 1 million subscribers and starting 2 different 7-figure businesses. That's right, 2 different businesses making $100,000 a month, right? So I'm not just theorizing here, this is how it actually works. And I'm dropping this completely free on this channel. You're not gonna see anything, even in paid courses, you're not gonna see information that is this high quality because I've been in the trenches doing this for the last 7 freaking years. And unlike those other YouTube coaches who hold back all the good stuff for their overpaid courses, I'm gonna give you the complete system completely free in this video right now. Because honestly, I'm sick of seeing talented creators fail because no one is teaching this stuff correctly. Now, before we dive in, I'm gonna establish some authority here because a lot of you watching this already know me, but if you didn't, my main channel is Shane Hummus. My name is Shane Hummus, and I make over 300K per month on YouTube. And this isn't some theoretical BS that those fake gurus are teaching, where they basically have never actually made a channel other than the channel that they made about teaching people to do YouTube, right? So it's the classic coaches coaching coaches how to coach coaches to coach coaches. They don't actually know how to mine the gold themselves. They just sell the picks and the shovels. Me, on the other hand, I know how to mine the gold. I've done it twice, and then I'm teaching you on this channel how to also mine the gold, and I'm selling you the picks and the shovels too, right? But I've actually done it in the first place. That's the difference between me and just about every YouTube guru out there. So here's my main channel with over 1 million subscribers. I'm in the trenches every single day testing what actually works, not just me, but also a bunch of my business owner buddies and also a bunch of YouTubers that I work with. I've helped over 8 people now get to 8 figures a year and over 20 people get to 7 figures a year on YouTube. So I'm not just helping people get views and subscribers, which is what the coaches usually only teach, and most of them are pretty bad at doing that. I'm also helping people to actually make money, right? Turning their YouTube channel into a real business. And it's not just my main channel. I'm making 6 figures with my second business, which is basically this channel right here. And all these other YouTube experts can barely even get one channel off the ground. Okay? But of course, they want to charge you thousands of dollars for their mediocre advice. And they basically just make sensationalized content on YouTube that, might sound good in theory, but it doesn't actually move the needle. Basically an absolute joke, right? So I've built multiple successful channels while using the exact same thumbnail strategy that I'm about to share with you in this video. So here are some thumbnails that got over 500,000 views. This is 9 boring but high paying remote jobs that are always hiring in 2025, 4.6 million views. This is the most useless degree, 4.2 million views. This is 17 work from home job companies always hiring, about 1.4 million views. This is colleges you need to avoid, 1.3 million views. 7 remote jobs that are always hiring with about 954K views, and 8 hardest majors in college with 823K views, and 21 highest paying work from home jobs with about 712,000 views. Google certificate tier list, 685K views, and top 10 college majors that are actually worth it with over 592K views. So I know what I'm talking about here, and I've been doing this consistently for the last 5 years. So in order to get you these unbelievable results, thumbnails are one of the most important things, and here's what we're gonna learn today. 1, the psychology of thumbnails, the actual science behind clicks that most creators ignore. 2, thumbnail concepts that work, not the garbage regurgitated strategies that everyone else is teaching, but actual thumbnail concepts that make a big difference and get you a ton of views. 3, easy ways to take high quality photos. And you don't need a $5,000 camera setup or something like that, right? Number 4, thumbnail creation rules. The real rules, not the watered down versions that you hear in other courses. Because I get sick and tired of seeing this regurgitated crap, right? 5, niche specific strategies, because what works in the beauty niche won't work in the finance niche. 6, pro design hacks. These are design hacks that are gonna make your workflow faster so it doesn't take you very long to make thumbnails, whether you're making them themselves or you give this to your team. And 7, and lastly, we're gonna do this thumbnail live. So there will be a demonstration at the end of me actually creating a thumbnail for you. Now, I'm not gonna hold anything back like all of those other YouTubers who give you 20% of the strategy and then they put the rest behind a paywall. I'm gonna give you all of the information completely free. So there's gonna be dedicated resources, thumbnail templates, examples of thumbnails that did really well and why they did really well, basically case study breakdowns. You can check all that out down in the description and the pinned comment below. So definitely download that because it's gonna be very useful as you're going through this training. So let's get something straight right away. The thumbnail is the thing that catches someone's attention instantly. Not your fancy title. Okay, maybe that is important as well, but that's not what this video is about. Not your intro, not your content. The thumbnail is number one. It's the thing that initially captures the attention of the person. You know, think about this kind of like a product. You could have the best product in the world, but if your packaging sucks, if your marketing sucks, no one is ever going to see it. Because it's not like a mere mortal can read a title in milliseconds, right? However, mere mortals do have the ability to comprehend a thumbnail in literally milliseconds, like less than 1/10 of a second. And that's literally what they do. They look at your thumbnail and within 1/10 of a second, their subconscious brain makes the decision on whether or not they're going to continue looking at the thumbnail or continue looking at the title or click on the video. And most creators are focusing on the wrong. They're spending hours perfecting their videos when their thumbnail looks like it was made by a third grader. And these so-called experts never tell you that a bad thumbnail means that nobody will ever see that video that you spent 20 hours creating, which is super painful. That has happened to me in the past. And when a viewer first notices your videos, their eyes move in this exact sequence. And it's really important to understand this. First, they look at the thumbnail, then they look at the title, then they look at the intro, right? They've actually done studies on this. They've actually mapped it out, like put these goggles on people's eyes that track their eyes as they look through YouTube. And that's why we know that the person looks at the thumbnail first, then the title, then they make the decision if they're gonna click on the video and look at the intro. But it goes way deeper than this. I mean, way deeper. And we're gonna get into that. But this is why it's crucial to understand viewer psychology at each stage. The thumbnail gets the initial attention, the title confirms their interest, and the intro keeps them watching. But with a thumbnail, you've already flopped on the first stage. And chances are that the viewer is gone. Poof. Bye-bye. So what's the first thing that someone notices in a thumbnail? Take a wild guess. And by the way, literally, I want you to guess on this part. It's the eyes, okay? The eyes are the first thing that people notice. Not your fancy text, not your bright colors, not the stupid emojis that everyone and their mother is slapping on thumbnails. It's the eyes, okay? And this is why if you have a personal brand, or even if you don't have a personal brand, you'll notice that most people will actually put pictures of somebody in the thumbnail, whether it's themselves or other people. And if you have your face on your thumbnail, which you absolutely should if you're building a personal brand, the eyes are the first thing the viewers notice. Then they notice the general facial expression. Then they notice the text on the thumbnail. And this is literally how the human brain is wired. We're programmed to look at eyes first because it's how we survived as a species, right? This is evolution. It's not a YouTube trick, it's literally human psychology, right? When someone walks into a room, like let's just say you're in a room, let's say you're at a doctor's office and you're waiting for your appointment, right? Somebody walks into the room, what is the first thing everyone in that room is gonna do? They're gonna look at the person's eyes. Now, why do they do this? Because you can tell a massive amount of information in a split second just by looking at someone's eyes. You can see who they're looking at, right? Are they looking at you? Are they looking at the receptionist? Are they looking at your girlfriend that's sitting right next to you? That tells a massive amount about their intention. You can also see almost immediately what mood they're in, right? Are they angry? Are they happy? You know, are they a friend or are they a foe, basically? And again, this gives you immediate information that is incredibly useful to you. And think about it like this. Animals that are social, generally speaking, have whites in their eyes, right? They have whites in their eyes, whereas animals that are antisocial, they aren't social, usually they don't have whites in their eyes. Why do you think that is? Because animals that are social want to make it as easy as possible for other animals to look at their eyes and tell what kind of mood they're in or tell what, you know, who they're looking at, et cetera, right? So this is literally human psychology. And that's why when someone walks in a room, you almost can't help but just like look them in the eyes. You don't even think about it. It's all happening under the surface. It's subconscious.
Quick break. This video is sponsored by me. Most of you don't know that I actually have my own coaching program on personal branding and then growing and making money on YouTube. And this is good for complete beginners, maybe even people who just want to get a job by growing their personal brand, all the way up to people who are very advanced on YouTube. And they get to work directly with myself and my team to help them reach their goals. Now, we are opening up 3 to 5 spots, and this is pretty rare. We usually don't have these open. We usually only limit them to select people. But we're opening up 3 to 5 spots, and you can check those out down in the description and the pinned comment below. And in this program, you'll get to work directly with myself and other people who are highly successful on YouTube. Just as an example, Sean was able to go all the way from being stuck, not making very much money on his channel, to making over $500,000 a month. Now, that's an example of one of my more advanced students, but there's lots of examples of people who started off from scratch and they got to 5K a month, 10K a month, etc. So check that out down in the description and the pinned comment below.
So when you're designing your thumbnails, you need to have high quality photos, right? And they need to be of yourself, of course, and they need to be blown up and take up a large amount of the thumbnail so that it's easy to see the whites of your eyes. And look at the top creators in any niche. Their faces are huge in the thumbnail and you can clearly see their eyes. This isn't a coincidence, it's strategic. Right, like even babies are drawn to faces. You know, they've done studies where they show babies a bunch of different things like objects and, you know, like the back of someone's head and the hands and stuff like that. And they almost always will look at a picture of a face over just about anything else. So we're literally wired to read emotional cues and to look at people's faces. And the top creators in any niche, their faces are huge in the thumbnail and you can clearly see their eyes. This isn't a coincidence, it's strategic. A lot of the times, either the face or the face and the body is gonna take up like 40, 50% of the thumbnail for many of these creators. And a lot of the time, you might not even notice this if you're not looking for it, but they will whiten their eyes. They'll actually make the eyes lighter so that they pop more. And this is something I do in many of my thumbnails if the eyes don't pop enough already. And it's also something that's extremely important to do if you're wearing glasses, right? Because the glasses actually reflect the light, so it makes your eyes pop less. Now, we're gonna go over in a little bit how to take a bunch of these pictures, but for now, just know that the eyes are extremely important and also the emotional expression. Now let's talk about thumbnail concepts. This is where I see most creators get completely lost and they end up copying whatever is trending without understanding why it actually works. So how do you find ideas for what you can use on a thumbnail? Well, the last place you would want to find them is the icon method Muse videos. Now the icon method is how you find video ideas. I've talked about that extensively on the channel. And basically you find videos from smaller channels that got a lot of views, despite the fact that the video itself, the whole video, including the thumbnail, is either mediocre or preferably bad. And so you would not want to copy the thumbnail on a video like that because the video is bad, right? The thumbnail sucks usually, or it's mediocre. And so you wouldn't want to copy the thumbnail. And this is what every lazy, unoriginal creator does. And it's why so many channels plateau at a few thousand subscribers. This is a common mistake that I see all the time, and it's a recipe for disaster. When you directly copy the thumbnail of a video that you're trying to compete with, you're setting yourself up for failure. So here's an example of a guy who tried to do this with me. So he didn't use the icon method because this is actually a good video right here, right? So this would not be a good example of the icon method. He has a small channel, and he had an even smaller channel at this point, and he tried to copy my video from a large channel that was an objectively good video with a good thumbnail, and it completely flopped, right? It only got about 4,000 views. And the reason for this is, one, he didn't use the icon method, so my video would not be a good video to do this with because my channel is actually quite large and it's a good video. And two, when he copied the video, it was too close, right? It was too close to the original thumbnail. And the title was too close as well. And this guy probably thought he was doing the right thing because some goofball YouTube expert out there probably told him that he should model what's working. But there's a right way to do this and there's a wrong way to do this. Because when he copied the title, it pitted his video up against mine. And you've got a channel that at the time probably had like 5,000 or 10,000 subscribers and a video that doesn't have that many views versus a channel with 1.21 million subscribers and 4.2 million views on the video. So who do you think YouTube's going to favor? Who do you think people are going to watch when they get presented that video? They're going to watch the channel that has a lot of subscribers and the video that has a lot of views over the channel that doesn't have a lot of subscribers and the video doesn't have a lot of views because of social proof, right? So they're going to click on my video and they're going to watch my video longer. YouTube is going to pit those two videos against each other and they're going to determine that his video was bad just because of the fact that he copied me. YouTube is a competitive marketplace, and if you follow the garbage advice floating around YouTube, Twitter, for instance, you're gonna get crushed. Plus, even if it does work out, once in a while, there's just so much demand for that video type that it might actually work out, you're gonna be seen as a lame ripoff of the original, right? When you copy a thumbnail style that the market has already seen, viewers see you as a lame ripoff of the original person. And nobody wants to watch the knockoff version, right? The dollar store version of Shane Hummus when they can watch the original. People can spot these copied thumbnails from a mile away, and it makes the creators look desperate and unoriginal. Now, this is an ideal situation, right? But with that being said, out of the two, thumbnail versus title, it's more acceptable to copy the thumbnail a little bit, right? But the title you absolutely do not want to copy under any circumstances or you will get crushed. The algorithm will literally pit you against the other video. And guess what? The bigger channel is going to win, right? They're gonna win almost every time because they have social proof. Yet I see experts telling new creators to use nearly identical titles all the time. Now here's an example of this. This guy right here on the bottom right made this video. If you're ambitious but lazy, please watch this video. Now, this was an objectively kind of bad video. First of all, it's 2 minutes and 36 seconds. That's not ideal. You should not make super short videos like that. The thumbnail is just a still shot of him and it looks like it's not that much of a high quality thumbnail. The thank me later, I guess that part's okay. But yeah, it's just an objectively not that good video. And you can see here that this guy right here teaching men's fashion, which I like him a lot. I think he makes great content, but he made a mistake here. He put, if you're ambitious but lazy, please watch this. So it's almost the exact same title. And you can see that this only did 0.7x of what his normal videos do. So it actually underperformed. And one of the main reasons this underperformed is because of the fact that he copied the title verbatim. If he didn't copy the title, this video would have done significantly better. Now, the truth is, big channels can sometimes get away with doing this kind of thing just because, again, they're a big channel. They have a huge advantage because they already have a massive audience of people watching their stuff. But it's not ideal. You don't want to do this. And this is a mistake that I see even big channels, guys that are very successful, this is a mistake that I see them doing even. But as a smaller or medium-sized channel, you absolutely cannot do this, okay? You will get crushed if you do this. Now, instead, a great place to look for thumbnails is actually from videos that are in a completely different niche. And this is a secret that none of the YouTube gurus will tell you because they're too busy selling you on their cookie cutter template strategy that worked in 2020 but fails miserably now. So to be clear, before we get into this, I am telling you to copy, right? Just to be very clear here, but not to copy the Muse video that you found with the icon method. There's a strategic way to do this that will help you stand out rather than blend in with every other creator that's covering the same topic, right? Because as Pablo Picasso said, good artists copy, but great artists steal. And this applies perfectly to YouTube thumbnails, right? Every successful creator borrowed elements from others and combined them in a unique way. So don't try to reinvent the wheel, but also don't become a cheap ripoff of another channel. These so-called YouTube experts selling you courses are telling you to be original while they're literally copying everything from the creators who came before them. And it's all about how you combine existing elements into something that feels fresh. So instead of just copying one person, especially the Muse video, the person in your niche, what's better is to copy what's already working from like 5 to 10 different channels, and it will become something completely new. And this is what top creators do. They're like DJs sampling from different tracks to create a hit song. When you combine elements from successful sources, you end up with something that feels fresh and original. So let's see a few examples. So here's a video I made a few years back, and I had named the video. I came up with this thumbnail idea after seeing a video from Nate O'Brien that did really well on a completely different subject. So you can see the similarities in the thumbnails, but it's not exactly the same, right? I used slightly different colors. I didn't use the same exact words or anything like that. And I didn't copy his idea from the same exact topic. That would be stupid. I took a winning thumbnail format from a completely different niche and I applied it to my content. And I combined it with the style of thumbnails that I saw on the UFC channel where the banner goes from behind the fighters' backs. And notice how I'm not just copying one creator. I'm taking elements from completely different sources and combining them. This is how you develop a unique style that doesn't look like everyone else in your niche. And also notice that I'm copying from creators that are in different niches. So the UFC is obviously MMA, right? It has nothing to do with my niche. In this particular niche, I basically teach people how to get remote jobs. And I'm copying from the UFC, but I'm also copying from Nate O'Brien, who teaches people how to make money online and how to invest. And also notice that the types of people that would watch either UFC content or they would watch Nate O'Brien's channel are likely younger men. And that is my target demographic, is younger men. And so I'm copying from adjacent niches that have a similar audience. So notice that I'm never gonna use some kind of, style of thumbnail that you might find in a makeup tutorial niche or some type of niche that like younger women would watch. So here's another example. For this one, I loosely based it off of Graham Stephan's thumbnails. Not as exact thumbnails on the same topic, right? Graham Stephan covers personal finance, and I hardly ever talk about personal finance. But his audience is very likely pretty similar to my audience. Now, I took his winning format and I applied it to a completely different subject. Meanwhile, all these small channels that are directly copying thumbnails from videos on the exact same topic and then complaining about the algorithm, you know, that obviously doesn't work very well for them. So here's some of his thumbnails, right? And notice how the text is all the way in the corner on his thumbnails and it's very bold. So I did the exact same thing on mine, and also notice the expression that he's making on the second thumbnail, very similar to the expression that I had on mine. And then also notice the fact that he's holding a prop in both thumbnails. I copied that as well. These subtle details are what makes the difference. Now you'll also notice that in these thumbnails, there's a lot of room on the top right and the bottom left, whereas his body takes up the room in the bottom right and the top left. The text is taking up that room. And notice that I did the exact same thing in my thumbnail. And then I combine this with the X and the checkmark style of the thumbnails that I see from the channel Teaching Men's Fashion. And again, I'm taking winning elements from multiple sources and creating something that feels fresh, not just copying one person's entire style. Because if you're going to rip off someone, just do it in a tasteful way. And also notice that both of those channels, Graham Stephan and Teaching Men's Fashion, likely are channels that get a lot of young male viewers again. And so the thumbnail styles that works with those audiences are probably also going to work with my audience. So as you see, I wasn't blatantly copying anyone. And even if I had copied them, their videos weren't the same subject as mine, right? This is critical. Such a common mistake that I see is creators trying to just straight up rip off and copy thumbnails from videos on identical topics and then wondering why they're not getting views. And a lot of the time they're trying to copy these thumbnails from channels that get millions of views and have millions of subscribers. And so there's a very good chance that the algorithm is going to pit your thumbnail off against these other channels, and it's not going to do well. And even if it does do well, you're going to be seen as a cheap ripoff by the audience. And I can't stress how important this is. You don't want to copy someone else's thumbnails who's already made a video on the same subject as you and is in the same niche as you. The algorithm will pretty much immediately compare your videos to theirs, and unless you have more authority or your video is just unbelievably good, you're going to lose that comparison every single time because they already have the social proof and they already have a video that did extremely well. Now, the best place to find these concept thumbnails is from channels that are not your direct competitors, but still make content for a similar audience as you. So while everyone else is looking within their own niche for inspiration, the smartest creators are looking outside of their bubble. For example, people who watch videos in the fishing niche are likely very similar to the types of people that are watching videos in the hunting niche. So if you're in fishing, look at what's working in the hunting niche and steal those concepts and apply them to fishing. The cross-pollination of ideas is how you create something that stands out in your niche. All right, so next let's talk about high quality personal photos. This is one of the easiest things to improve, but I see so many creators neglecting this fundamental aspect of thumbnail creation. Now, what I like to do is just set up a camera and take a ton of photos of myself with different facial expressions and hand gestures. And not just a couple, but dozens of different expressions and hundreds of photos. Now, most creators have like 3 thumbnail faces that they use over and over again, which gets boring fast. So variate your thumbnail expressions, even if you have to look like a goofball behind the camera. And it also helps if you have a green or blue background, as it's easier to make this background disappear. This is referred to as a render photo or a PNG, and you can have someone do this for you on Fiverr for like $5. So you don't need some fancy studio setup to take thumbnail photos, just good lighting and a solid background. So here's a bunch of examples of me doing that. And the way you would find these expressions is by looking at a bunch of different popular personal brand YouTube channels, hopefully ones that are within your niche. Then you study their facial expression on their viral thumbnails and you try to recreate that facial expression. Now note, I'm not just copying one person, I'm studying patterns across dozens of different successful channels and looking at what consistently works across their different niches. So I would literally just take my phone out and I would look at a bunch of thumbnails and just try to recreate their expressions in those thumbnails. So again, here are some examples and here are some of the most common faces that work really well. First one is the shocked, scared, or the classic O face. Now, one thing I want to note here is notice how the whites of my eyes are easily seen in all of these examples. I do that on purpose. And again, this is basic human psychology. We are drawn to expressions of surprise or fear because they signal something important is happening. Another winning expression is the serious or disappointed face. This works because it signals judgment or concern, which makes viewers curious about what could be wrong. And it creates tension and makes people want to know what the issue is. And one kind of way you can think about this is, if your girlfriend had some of these expressions, right, on her face, you could probably tell that, you should ask her what's going on, okay? if she has some of these expressions, it's going to get your attention, right? It's going to create tension, and you're going to want to know what the issue is before, you know, things escalate. And another one is a happy, confident face, right? So this works especially well for tutorials or videos where you're sharing good news. So these are three core expressions: surprise, serious, and happy. And these are the foundations of effective thumbnail faces. And these three emotions seem to do the best when it comes to getting clicks, but you need to keep in mind the vibe of the video. More on this later, right? Because you want to make sure that your thumbnail expression, your idea, your title, and your intro all match, right? You want them to be congruent and have the same vibe. And honestly, it used to be that extreme emotions did the best, like extreme O face, for instance. You might have noticed this a few years back. This was doing extremely well in a lot of different channels. And in some niches, it still does very well, but I've noticed the platform has evolved. And recently I found that the sad and subtle emotions tend to do just as well, if not better, than extreme faces and emotions. And you can see this reflected in my thumbnail style changing over time, because the platform is consistently evolving, and what worked 2 or 3 years ago might not work today, depending on your niche. So you'll kind of see that, you know, some of the thumbnails that have been doing extremely well for me lately, for instance, this one, I call it the sad boy face, and it's me not even making eye contact with the camera, and me just looking away from the camera like I'm sad or defeated. But with that being said, you should test this out in your niche, as it's gonna be different depending on your niche, right? Depending on your niche, the type of content you make, etc. And what works in finance may not work in the make money online niche, for instance. So there's no one size fits all approach to thumbnails. You need to understand your specific audience and what triggers them to click. So here are some examples of thumbnails with happy and more extreme faces and emotions. So study these carefully. And it's not about having some complicated secret to thumbnails. It's about understanding these core emotional expressions and using them strategically for your specific content. Now, one pro tip here, because honestly, I hate doing this. I probably do it about once a year, but I absolutely hate doing it. You know, making all these weird expressions. I feel so goofy doing this. But one pro tip is to just drink a little bit of wine when you're doing the photo shoots. I did this probably, you know, in the last 5 photo shoots, I've probably done this like 4 out of 5 times. And it really helps a lot. Just drink a little bit of wine, get a little bit loose, and just start making some weird facial expressions. And it honestly helps a lot. Yeah, you basically want to activate goofball mode because that's how you're going to get the best thumbnail photos. Just like extreme exaggerated expressions in many cases are going to be great. Then you can use websites like Adobe Background Remover or remove.bg to remove the background of the photo. So again, a solid green or blue background works best for this. Makes it a lot easier to remove, but you can remove the background even if it's multicolored, and these free tools make it incredibly easy to create professional looking thumbnails. Additionally, you can just do this yourself on Photoshop or Canva. There are a lot of tutorials online, and removing backgrounds is something you can learn in like 15 minutes on YouTube for free, and it doesn't require any special skills or expensive software. And if you really don't want to do it yourself, you can hire someone on Fiverr to take out the background on all of your photos for you, and it'll probably cost something like $5 to $10 for a batch of images. If you do a bunch of images, like hundreds of them, it might cost like $50 to $100. And this is a tiny investment that can dramatically improve your thumbnail quality. And this will create what's known as a PNG or render photo, which is a photo with a completely removed background. And pretty much all the top creators use these because they allow for cleaner, easier to use, and more impactful design, where the focus stays on your face and message without a distracting background. So here's an example of before and after. And you'll notice that my hair is expertly taken out here. So if someone does a really job of this, it'll kind of just be like a, you know, like a straight cut like this. But if they do a good job, they'll keep the texture of the hair, which is something that you want to keep. Now, the great thing about this is when you're in the process of creating a thumbnail, which is very artistic, you don't have to pause to take out the background if you have a bunch of thumbnail PNGs ready to go. And this is called batching, right? And it's a huge time saver. And it also stops you from switching your kind of mindset, right? So you basically just have a single mindset where you're just batching the photo. You don't have to, you know, interrupt your creative flow in order to take out the background. You can just keep going and create a bunch of thumbnails all at once. And this goes for you and or your team. Now, additionally, a really easy way of doing this as well, if you don't want to take out the background, is to just use your background as the thumbnail as well. And this is something that I've done many times on my main channel. And this is especially good if you have a nice background. You know, not every thumbnail needs to have the background removed. And this is a safe option as well if you want to save yourself time when it comes to editing a thumbnail. And it fits really well into the concept of congruence, because you see a thumbnail with a studio's background, and then you click on the video, and then it has the same exact background. And subconsciously, that makes the person think, oh, I didn't just get click clickbaited by this YouTuber because he's in the same studio as what was shown on the thumbnail. And that's because the feel of the thumbnail is the same as what they see right when they start the video, or in some cases, even when they hover over the video. So this makes them more likely to actually click on the video and stay on the video once it starts. Now, additionally, you can also use props like I do in these photos. And you can see I'm holding my 1 million subscriber plaque here, and then a book that I absolutely love, Deep Work by Cal Newport. And props add interest and context to your thumbnails. Now, additionally, one thing you can do is use your hands, but you wanna be very careful with your hands. You wanna keep them close to your face, right? So usually you might do something like this, but that's not really good for a thumbnail because it makes it very hard for them to enter, for the thumbnail editor to actually put it in. So instead, you wanna do something like this and keep your hands as close to your face as possible when you're taking thumbnails. And you'll notice with all the example thumbnails that I showed, where I did have my hand, the hand is always very close to the face. And a hand is another way of expressing emotion, right? So if you put your hand over your mouth kind of like this, it makes it kind of seem like you're shocked, like you put your hand over your mouth like you're stopping yourself from screaming or something. Now, additionally, this is kind of a pro tip, especially for people that are super busy, they just don't have time to do the high quality thumbnails right now. You can just record a really high quality video of yourself, hopefully in 4K, and then you can just pause it at good moments to capture the emotional expressions that you're going for. So it'd be the same thing where you look up emotional expressions on your phone and then you just try to make those emotional expressions on video. And you can even just take a screenshot from your video, especially if you're recording with high quality video as well. And sometimes this can come across a little bit more authentic or candid because you're just naturally making these expressions, and it can come across a little bit better than if you just took a bunch of photos. So just as an example, you can do a bunch of goofy faces on camera as long as you're recording a video. And congrats, you just made a bunch of funny faces in front of a camera. And none of those were captured, right? Kidding aside, you can just do a bunch of expressions kind of like this. You can just smile, you can do a sad face, you can do a sad face looking at the camera, you can do a sad face kind of looking down to the side. You can point fingers up here like you're gonna put something over here. You can go like this, you can kind of go like this, right? With an O face, right? All kinds of stuff like that. Then you just pick and choose what you like. And again, having the same background on the thumbnail in the video does increase the feeling of congruence and authenticity, and viewers appreciate this consistency. So it creates a seamless experience from thumbnail to video, which builds trust with your audience, either subconsciously or consciously. Now, how do you take these photos? Get a friend, partner, or family member to snap them for you. That's probably the easiest way to do it. You can also hire a pro locally on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. Hire them to either come over to your house or you can go to their studio. And this is a cheap and easy way to do it. Or you can just use an app to trigger your camera remotely, or simply set a 5-second timer on your camera or a 3-second timer, hit the button, and then start posing. You can even enable it to where the camera just takes picture after picture after picture and just do a bunch of pictures like that. And then you can just pick the ones that you like the most and you're good to go. Now, there are many ways to get good photos without complicated setups. So, these are just a few of them. Pick whichever applies to you the most. And also make a list of the different props that you can put in your video. So if you're talking about YouTube, obviously you could use like your 1 million subscriber prop if you have one, right? Or your 100K subscriber prop. If you're talking about money, you could use dollar bills as your prop, right? So make a list of all of these different physical things that you can have to use as a prop in your thumbnails. All right, now let's get a little bit deeper on emotional expressions, okay? Now, I'm not gonna make you talk about your feelings, okay? But this is where I see most creators missing huge opportunities by not matching their emotions to their audience and context. Because generally speaking, if your channel is B2B, high ticket, or it has a sophisticated audience, the emotions that you use on your thumbnails should be more subtle, and you should go for more, authenticity and congruence rather than extreme emotion. Now, again, you have to test this out. Different audiences respond to different styles of expression. But with that being said, generally speaking, when you're smaller, your production quality doesn't matter as much, and it almost helps you if anything. So low production quality gives you more of an authentic or real vibe, and you don't need perfect production quality from day one. In fact, an overly polished video look can sometimes make smaller channels seem less authentic. So a great example of this is Serge Guattari, and he sells 10K plus coaching offers, and his emotions on his thumbnails are very subtle. He understands his audience and what they respond to. He's not trying to appeal to everyone. He's laser focused on his specific market. So if you look at his emotions, they're very subtle here. There's really only one thumbnail here where he's kind of making some emotion, the bottom middle one, he's making a little bit of an O face there. But even then, it's not that much of an emotion, right? He's not trying to be too much of a goofball in the thumbnails because he's targeting serious business owners. And this is audience awareness, right? Understanding what will resonate with a specific group of people that you're trying to reach. And also notice how easy it is to see the whites of his eyes. Even with subtle expressions, this fundamental principle still applies, right? The eyes grab the attention first, regardless of whether you're using extreme or subtle expressions. And this psychological trigger works across all content types. Charlie Morgan's another example. He sells a $12,000 coaching product. His audience is sophisticated. They're business owners, and his expressions are subtle as well. And this isn't a coincidence. The top earners understand their audience's psychology. And when you're selling premium offers, your thumbnails need to reflect that level of professionalism, right? So the whites of his eyes are very easy to see. You can tell on some of these, he actually purposely whitened his eyes. I would say the top left one, the top middle one, the bottom right one, and possibly some of the others, he actually whitened his eyes. So the whites of his eyes really stick out here. And he also has subtle expressions in these examples because, again, he's targeting serious business owners. And when you're selling high ticket offers, you need to convey trust and authority, not look like some type of dancing clown or some type of clickbait creator with crazy expressions. Your thumbnails need to match your offer and your audience. Another example is Thomas Gannett. He sells and markets a monthly recurring software offer, Go High Level, but he sells it to a sophisticated audience, which is agency owners. And his expressions are more subtle as well. So this pattern is consistent across successful high ticket sellers. Now in his example, he's using more raw, authentic type photos. He's either using a photo that's not from a super nice camera, or he's just taking a still shot from his video. But with that being said, his expressions are still very subtle. And this is because he understands his audience. He's not trying to get 13-year-olds to click on his content. He's targeting serious business owners with money to spend. So different audience, different thumbnail strategy. And generally speaking, beginner, low or medium ticket audiences, like audiences that buy low to medium ticket products, will respond better to more extreme emotions in many cases. But you definitely want to test this out as it changes from niche to niche. And this is why the one-size-fits-all thumbnail advice that you hear from these gurus is complete garbage, right? There's no one-size-fits-all approach to thumbnails. For example, Graham Stephan often uses extreme emotions. And this isn't random, it's strategic. He knows his audience is primarily beginners in personal finance. They're not as sophisticated as these other audiences, and he's tailoring his thumbnail style specifically to his audience. So you can see here, he uses a lot of extreme emotions here, like an extreme O face, on the outer left and the outer right, and then kind of an O face mixed with a smiley face in the middle here. But it might completely flop for you if you're targeting a different demographic. So you need to understand what triggers your specific audience to click on your videos. So here's his disappointed serious face that Graham uses. And again, this works for his specific audience and content style. And he's strategic about which expression he uses with different content types. And here's the happy, confident face that Graham uses. Notice how he cycles through these core emotional expressions based on the content of each video. And this isn't random, it's deliberate strategy based on what drives clicks for his specific audience. And Meet Kevin does the same thing. You know, he's probably one of the biggest creators in the finance niche as well. So you can see he uses some pretty extreme emotions here, right? This is kind of an extreme O face. He's, you know, putting his hand in the photo. On the outside, this is kind of another extreme kind of, you know, expression, kind of a scared face. In the middle, it's a little bit more of a subtle expression. And it makes sense because the middle video is more of a positive video, right? So he's revealing his entire $20 million stock portfolio. That's positive. Whereas the outside videos are news events that are happening, right? Wall Street Journal just exposed the COVID vaccine, media flips. And then the outside one here is just approved extra $1,000 stimulus checklist. So that's kind of news that's happening. So it makes more sense that he's putting kind of an extreme expression there. And then here's the disappointed and serious face from Meet Kevin. And again, consistently, he's using the same core expressions that work for his specific audience. And successful creators have a toolkit of expressions that they use strategically rather than randomly. And it wouldn't make sense for you to be smiling when you have a video called I Got Sued by Tesla, right? He kind of has like a really disappointed face here. You know, he got sued by Tesla here. I don't know if that's a joke video or not, but it wouldn't make sense if he was smiling there. That would be weird. It wouldn't be congruent. And as ridiculous as it sounds and as cringe as it may be, you have to nail the expression on the thumbnail just like how he does in that video, I Got Sued by Tesla, right? So in this video right here, he is smiling how to buy your first rental property because it's a positive video. He's telling people how to do something. In this video, he's smiling as well because how to go from 1,000 to millionaire step by step. Again, it's a positive video. He's showing you how to do something. And in this video, he's smiling because it's biggest new stimulus plan in Congress, $2,000 plus $1,000 for all. So he strategically is using the happy or confident face because he understands the psychology behind what makes people click and how to make it congruent with the overall idea of the video. So study this stuff. Study the best videos from people and what emotion the thumbnail conveys and why that emotion makes sense in the context of the video title and the idea of the video and what he's talking about. Now, another thing to note is these two channels, Graham Stephan and Meet Kevin, appeal to a wider audience of people who are closer to being beginners or intermediates in the subject of personal finance, aka they're unsophisticated audiences, aka it's mass market content, okay? And they also sell lower to mid-ticket products to this audience. Their thumbnail strategy perfectly matches their audience and business model, but if they were making niche content for a more sophisticated audience, I guarantee you they wouldn't be putting those extreme emotions in the thumbnail nearly as much. Because these types of more extreme emotions tend to turn off sophisticated audiences and high ticket buyers. So it's best to go with a more subtle emotional look on your face if you're selling high ticket products and services, or if you have a sophisticated audience, right? So for instance, if your audience is doctors, lawyers, management consultants, etc. So your thumbnail style should really match your business goals. So when you're watching these YouTube videos, like your favorite creators, study the game inside of the game, okay? Pay attention to don't just look at the thumbnail and see it as a consumer, but see it as a creator. Like think, okay, why did they do this thumbnail? What were they thinking when they made this thumbnail? Why are they using a happy expression here? Why are they using a sad expression? Why are they using a shocked expression, right? Pay attention to the game inside of the game. And whenever you're consuming content, come at it from a perspective, not just as a consumer, but also as a creator yourself. Now let's talk about thumbnail creation rules. And these are principles that I've tested across millions of views, and I found them to consistently work over and over again. And really not just millions, but hundreds of millions of views between my own videos and also people that I've worked with. First of all, never repeat the same words and or numbers in the title as you do in the thumbnail. This is a very common mistake that I see. I see people doing this all the time. If you say the same thing in both places, you're wasting valuable real estate. And the thumbnail and title should complement each other, not duplicate information. And in fact, this is something that I look for when I'm, analyzing videos with the icon method. I'm finding objectively bad videos for my clients. So this is an example of a video that I found for one of my clients. And you can see that, this is a channel, it's a small channel. The video did quite well, 319,000 views, and they literally repeat the title and the thumbnail. So this is bad, right? When you see this, you know that this person doesn't really know what they're doing when it comes to making content. Because when you put the title in the thumbnail, what happens is the viewer is gonna look at the thumbnail and then look at the title and they just see the same thing twice. So you're basically wasting their time. Whereas if you put text that's short and enticing for someone, chances are they're going to read the text and then based on the emotional impulse, they'll either watch the video or check the title to see what the video is all about. So you really wanna have the least amount of words possible in the thumbnail to get the point across with a maximum of 4. Now that doesn't mean put 4 words in the thumbnail. That means a maximum of 4. Usually your thumbnail should have far less than 4 words, right? In fact, usually less is better, okay? So the least amount of words possible is gonna be the best. Less is more. Because again, the thumbnail is an emotional decision. If you make them read too many words, you're gonna activate their logical brain. And you don't wanna do that. You wanna keep them making an emotional decision, like a split-second impulsive decision to watch your video. And another thing is numbers, especially dollar amounts, tend to catch the eye if you put them in thumbnails. So try to make these numbers as specific as possible. Something like $101,952 instead of 100,000, for instance, because specific numbers seem more believable and authentic, while round numbers scream fake to viewers. Now, here's an example for my videos. You can see that I put $12,578.12 on the first one and $77 on the second one. Because think about it. $12,578.12 is just way more convincing than $12,600. And also, avoid at all costs using full sentences in the thumbnails. Like you should almost never be using full sentences. Instead of typing in the thumbnail, jobs that can make you 100K per year, type best jobs, then next line, 100K per year. Because shorter, punchier text is what actually works. So do not put mini essays on the thumbnail, okay? And then wonder why nobody clicks. That is a terrible idea. So here's a bunch of examples of me doing that. And another thing I should note is white text seems to catch the eye and perform best overall on thumbnails. Yellow text also does pretty well. And if you are gonna use colors in the text, a lot of the time it's best to use complementary colors. So colors that are on the opposite of the color wheel. So for example, we use red and yellow in some of our thumbnails because red and yellow are on the opposite of the color wheel. And generally speaking, bright colors with a dark background tend to perform extremely well overall. Now, the text in the thumbnails should also have some kind of outline in order to make it pop. And the outline should contrast with the background. And this is basic design 101, because if you put a bright set of text over a bright background, then there's going to be no contrast, right? And then the viewers won't be able to read your and that's not good. So if your background is light, a lot of the time, it makes sense to put darker text. And if your background is dark, a lot of the time, it makes sense to put lighter text. And sometimes it's best to put a stroke, glow, or shadow around yourself as well as your text. And the goal is to create clear separation between you and your background. Just don't overdo this or you'll look like you're about to be abducted by aliens. Now, another thing is you should be able to tell what the video is about, generally speaking, just by looking at the thumbnail alone. Your thumbnail should basically tell a story of what the video is about. So if you look at your thumbnail without looking at the title and you can't tell what the video is about, that's usually a bad sign. Now, you might be thinking, well, Shane, you've made some thumbnails where it's not completely clear what the video is about. And yes, these are general rules and you should try to follow them like 95% of the time. But once in a while, if you don't follow one or two of the rules, it can still work out. But this is a numbers game, right? This is a percentage game. And generally speaking, if someone needs to read your title to understand what the thumbnail means, you've already lost. So when you see the text degrees to avoid, I bet you can tell that the video isn't about hardware tools, right? But jokes aside, those three words are something you can read in a split second and it tells a story in a split second, which triggers your impulses. Now, another thing about thumbnails is they absolutely should not be busy. Simple thumbnails work best. Beginners try to put a lot of words or a lot of objects or emojis in the thumbnail, and that doesn't work. And guys, I have tested this extensively. I have split tested hundreds and hundreds of videos and hundreds of thumbnails. Simple thumbnails work best. I can't stress this enough. Look at any mega successful channel. Their thumbnails are usually brain dead simple. Mine is as simple as choose your degree. Finance degree with a question mark. Why accounting is a great degree. And it's just great degree. And these sets of text are designed to trigger a viewer's impulse to click the video shown. So limit the amount of colors in your thumbnails, right? 3 max. And guys, when I say max, I don't mean 3. I mean 3 maximum. Usually just 1 color is fine. In some cases 2 colors, but 3 colors absolutely maximum. And the goal is not to make a colorful unicorn in the thumbnail, right? So limit the colors to 3. And you can see how I limit the colors on the first one to mainly black with white text and a little hint of blue. On the second one, it's basically just green for the majority of the thumbnail, then white for the text and black for the background. And for the third one, it's mostly just light blue, white, and colors of the blurred logos that are honestly barely visible, especially considering that it's going to look small when it's on the YouTube homepage. All right, the next thing is you want to use the rule of thirds to place your face in the thumbnail correctly. So you either want to place it dead in the middle, like upper middle, or you want to place it on the intersection of the lines in the top right or top left as shown in the rule of thirds. And this will create a visually appealing image. Now the rule of thirds comes from composition rules for photographers, right? People who do this professionally. And they've actually known this for like over 100 years now. So there's no need for us to reinvent the wheel. And once you've seen the rule of thirds, you're never going to unsee it. So for instance, here's a picture of Chris Pratt in Jurassic World, and you'll see that he is placed in the upper right, like the eyes, the main subject is in the upper right of the video frame. So here are some examples, right? Face in the middle, upper middle, face in the left, and face in the right. So following the rule of thirds, these aren't arbitrary placements. They're based on fundamental principles of visual composition, right? This makes it visually appealing to the human eye. And you'll notice that I do this in almost every thumbnail. And when it comes to composition, you want to have good composition in your thumbnail outside of just where your face is placed. And by this, I mean, make sure that the space that is used is balanced on either side. Visual balance is critical for thumbnails that convert because balance is everything. So you'll notice here in this thumbnail, there's a lot of open space in the top left and the bottom right. It's balanced. And then you'll notice that there's no space in the bottom left and the top right. Again, it's balanced. Now, oftentimes it's good to use a background behind your text that contrasts to the text itself. So if the text is bright, use a black background. If the text is dark, use a bright background. And this is basic design 101. Again, no need to reinvent the wheel. And then shapes such as arrows, check marks, and X's can enhance a thumbnail and help to tell a story if used correctly. And remember, every thumbnail should be like a mini story. And these visual elements communicate instantly what the video is about, while text text takes time to process. And the top creators understand this psychological principle. Not only that, you can basically point the trajectory of where the viewer's eyes should go. So you can literally tell them where to go with their eyes by using this correctly. And I mentioned this before, but I'm gonna mention it again because it's so important. You want to model other channels' thumbnails, preferably ones that are outside of your niche, but still appeal to the same demographic or psychographics that your niche appeals to, such as young men in my case. And this is how you create a unique style that doesn't compete directly with established channels in your niche. So here's a great example of that. Alex Hormozi came out with this thumbnail. It did quite well, and it's how to grow your business so fast in 2025 that it feels illegal. Justin Sung took this thumbnail, very similar principle, same text color, etc. It just applies to his niche instead of Alex Hormozi's niche. Alex Hormozi, of course, makes make money online content. Justin Sung, on the other hand, makes productivity content, right? So same color of text, same board in the background. In Alex Hormozi's case, it's green. In Justin Sung's case, it's gray or black. But he took the same video idea, how to be so productive that it feels illegal, and he took a very similar thumbnail idea here as well. And chances are people that are interested in making money online are also interested in how to be productive, right? So it's a very similar audience of people, so this works. Now, if he copied someone from within his own niche, it probably wouldn't have worked. But because of the fact that he copied someone from a different niche that has a similar demographic, it works. So Justin basically stole that high converting thumbnail concept from Hormozi, but it's brilliant because they're not in the same niche. And this is exactly what I've been telling you to do. Steal winning concepts from outside of your niche. Don't be the idiot who copied the exact same content within your niche and then wonders why your YouTube videos are getting absolutely buried and they're not getting any views. Now, when I started, I modeled a lot of my thumbnails off of Graham Stephan's channel, for instance. And as I got bigger, I started to kind of develop my own style. But notice I didn't model my content off of people in my niche. Graham Stephan talks about investing. I barely even touch that topic. I talk mostly about how to make money online and how to get a good job, and specifically work online. And this is how successful channels evolve. They don't start with some unique original style. They borrow smart elements from others, and then gradually they develop their own approach. Now, another thing is use a text font that is easy to read, right? It's bold, it grabs attention, such as Impact, Beboss, or Montserrat. Don't get creative with fonts. Stick with what works because these fonts work really well. And heck, I even tell my clients just to stick to these fonts because it's that good, right? No need to overthink, oh, what font should I use? You know, people put a lot of thought into that kind of thing. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. As long as you're using a bold font that really sticks out. Dude, you don't have time to think about that stuff, right? So just start off with those 3 suggestions if you're at all unsure about what fonts to use. And then usually it's best to capitalize the text that you put in the thumbnails. Uppercase text reads faster and it has more visual weight, which again makes it easier to process instantly. And then another tip, like I said before, is to brighten the whites of the eyes so that they are easily visible and therefore capture people's attention. And I've mentioned this before, but it's so important that I'm saying it again. The eyes are the first thing that people notice, so make sure that they pop. In fact, some people will enlarge their eyes. They will literally make their eyes larger. Josh Mayo, for example, whitens his eyes and he actually enlarges them. So it almost has like a little bit of an anime effect. So it looks like he's an anime character with large eyes. Now, moving on, backgrounds can be good, but make sure that they aren't too busy or distracting. And also make sure that they don't clash with you or the text that you use. So the background should support the main elements, not compete with them. So here's an example of me using the exact same background that I'm gonna have in the video. And another example is this graph right behind me. I was the first person to do this in the Make Money Online niche. I took this from the investing niche. And it's relevant to the topic because people that are interested in Make Money Online or getting a remote job are interested in making more money, right? So they want to see their bank account going up. So it's relevant to the topic, but it's simple enough that it doesn't distract from myself or the text. So the background elements should add context without creating visual chaos. So an example of this is to use the color picker on Photoshop to choose a bright color from anywhere you see on the internet, for instance, other thumbnails, website designs you like, etc. And let's say you want to use light blue color. If you want to know what color would be good complementary color to the light blue, this specific color, for instance, has a hex code of 3399CC, which is basically the code of a very specific color. And when you put that in the color calculator, you will see that it gave us a specific orange that will match the light blue color that we put in the color calculator. So if you're unsure about what colors match, then this is objectively a good color combination. So it's gonna look good on a thumbnail. So just as an example, red and green go together quite well. And that's why I use them oftentimes on my thumbnails. And this isn't freaking rocket science. You don't have to be Van Gogh to do this, right? Understanding basic color theory can dramatically improve your thumbnail design without requiring any artistic talent at all. And guys, this next tip is worth its weight in gold. Like, this has saved me so many times. When in doubt, zoom out. So whether you're making your thumbnail on Photoshop or Canva, which I do recommend Photoshop, that's gonna be the best one. However, if you're just starting and you don't want to learn Photoshop, just use Canva. Make your thumbnails small because most people are going to see these thumbnails on their phone, right? So make the thumbnails small. When you make them small, it's going to be very easy to tell if they don't have good composition. So just as an example, this thumbnail right here, if you're looking at it on a big computer, you can easily read, you know, the text, "You're wasting your time." But if you look at it on your phone, it's almost impossible to see the text. And that's the big mistake that this guy made on this thumbnail, and it's why this video didn't do very well, right? This video would have done much better than it did if the text was bigger. So your audience is basically gonna look at it like it's the Mr. Chang meme trying to read a small piece of paper if your text is too small. And your viewers just don't have time to squint their eyes and read your off of the thumbnail. So go ahead and make your thumbnail small on Photoshop or whatever software you're using and make sure it still looks good. So I usually do this, and I'm not even kidding here, at least 10 times as I'm making the thumbnail, and it makes a massive difference. So look at these examples of thumbnails and you can observe how big my faces are on the thumbnails and how big the text is. And this is despite being zoomed out on the YouTube page. And this isn't an accident, it's strategic. Usually you can see the whites of my eyes, you can see the text, and you can see my face clearly. So the faces need to be large enough to see the eye expression even at small sizes and to read the text. So the thumbnail should make you curious enough to look at the title, and it should raise questions in the viewer's mind that can only be answered by clicking the video, right? So that's another thing, is you want to make them curious with the thumbnail. And the thumbnail should express an emotion: excited, scared, happy, confident, etc. And human faces expressing emotion are attention magnets, right? We're literally wired to notice them. And emotionless, bland thumbnails fail to trigger any psychological response from the viewers. And it's generally best if the face that you use takes up a large portion of the thumbnail. The larger the face, the better, generally speaking. And this is why I recommend to put your hands as close to the face as possible when you're doing your thumbnails so that you can actually make the face bigger. And look at any mega successful channel, their faces are huge in the thumbnails, right? Compare your thumbnails to their thumbnails. And I've done this so many times with students, and they'll see, wow, the faces in the successful channels are much larger. They take up a lot more of the thumbnail space than my thumbnails, right? And then they make that change and all of a sudden they start doing better. Now, another thing is the timestamp of the video is going to be on the bottom right of the thumbnail. And it's best if it doesn't cover up anything important like words, etc. And this is a subtle detail that makes a big difference. So plan your thumbnail layout with the knowledge that the bottom right corner will be covered by the timestamp. And you'll notice in most of my thumbnails, I am on the right side. And the reason for that is because I don't want the timestamp to interfere with either the words or the other stuff that's in the thumbnail. Like imagine with this one right here that's on the left, top 5 college degrees that are actually worth it. Imagine if I put that college degree on the bottom right, the thumbnail would be interfering with it, and that would make the image less appealing. Now, if I do ever put my face on the left, I make sure that the timestamp doesn't interfere with the words or any of the important images that are in the thumbnail. And small details like this add up to big differences in click-through rate. So look through these and notice how I used many of the rules that I show above. Study this and you will start to see the matrix. And once you understand these principles, you'll start noticing them everywhere in successful channels. And you'll also see unsuccessful channels and see them breaking a lot of these rules. And you'll develop an intuitive sense for what works and what doesn't work. And in that list that I talked about down below, I have 30 thumbnails that went viral for me recently. And you can download those by clicking the link in the description in the pinned comment below. So study these carefully. These aren't just random thumbnails. They're the result of constantly testing and refining what actually works. So definitely study those and check those out. And look, I know a lot of you are busy, you're running your businesses, you have client work, you're traveling, and the idea of creating all these thumbnails seems overwhelming. But here's the truth. If you don't nail your thumbnails, you're going to have a hard time getting views. And without views, chances are you're not going to make money. The good news is that once you understand these principles, you can create knockout thumbnails in minutes, not hours. And this isn't about spending more time. It's about focusing on what actually drives results. And if you want me to personally help you transform your YouTube channel with these strategies, I've opened up a few spots for one-on-one strategy calls this month. And during this call, we will analyze your current situation and what you're doing right now. or what you're not doing right now. We'll figure out what you want to be doing and what you need to be doing. And then we'll create a custom strategy tailored to your specific niche and your specific audience to get you to your goal. And then we'll see whether or not we're a good fit to work together on this. Now, I can't keep these spots open forever, so if you're serious about scaling your YouTube channel while still running your business, click the link in the description to book your call now. Stop wasting time on videos no one watches. Let's get you the views, subscribers, and revenue that your content deserves. Now we're gonna go through step by step and create a thumbnail for one of my videos. And you're gonna see me doing it live on the screen. All right, guys, so now we're on Canva, and I just wanted to show you how easy this is for you to create thumbnails. So if you're a beginner, definitely stick around, but if you wanna do this on Photoshop, you can actually skip ahead. So Photoshop's a little more advanced, but you also have more control over the details of the thumbnail. So if you wanna do Photoshop, go ahead and skip ahead. If you wanna see how easy it is to make thumbnails on Canva, just keep watching. So let's go to Canva and click Create a Design. Go to Custom Size, and then put in 1920 by 1080p. Then click Create a New Design. Next, I'm going to use this screenshot from a video. Since it's a low quality, blurry photo, which is garbage for thumbnails, we need to scale this to high definition. Nobody is going to be clicking on your pixelated face in 2024, okay? So we'll use Gigapixel AI to fix this trash, okay? So drag and drop it here, and let the AI scale this photo into something actually usable. So this is non-negotiable if you want people to actually click your stuff. Now, of course, if you already have a nice photo, then you don't have to use Gigapixel AI, but it is really nice to use. So now it's done. Export this image and save it. Close this window and delete the original garbage. Now let's go to Canva and upload our image. So just drag and drop, click your photo, hold Alt or Option on your keyboard, and scale this properly. Then zoom out by holding Control or Command. Now resize this to fill in the frame. Your face needs to be huge. Tiny faces don't get clicks. And let's adjust our photo. So click Edit, go to Adjust, and let's make this pop. We'll put the brightness around 15, contrast around 5, highlights -10, and let's bump the brightness to 20. Shadows at 5 will do, and black -10. And when you're satisfied, just go ahead, close it. And now we'll add our text. So the headline is 1M niche because big numbers get clicks, period. And a lot of the time it is a good idea to put numbers in your thumbnail. So grab the text tool, click the text box, and type 1M. Then increase the size, make it huge, right? This isn't a book report, it's a thumbnail. So drag it into position. Change the color to white. Go ahead, change the font to Montserrat Black. That's a pretty good one. Some other good fonts are, of course, Impact if you have that as an option. But this will match our reference. Then increase the size even more. If it doesn't take up at least 30% of the thumbnail, it's probably too small. Now duplicate this by holding Alt or Option and dragging it down. Double click to edit and type niche. Make this a bit smaller, drag it into position, and use your arrow keys for precise placement. Then check your work, right? So 1 mil niche text should be dominant and impossible to miss, and move it into the final position. Now for the last part, we want the eyes to pop because eyes create engagement. And since Canva doesn't have a proper brush tool with adjustable softness, which is why Photoshop is superior, we need a workaround. So duplicate the photo with Control D and then adjust the opacity to match our original background. Then set transparency to 100% and move the position backwards until we can see the text. Now we want to edit just the eyes, so increase the brightness to around 40, sharpness to around 5, and clarity to around 10. And since we only want the eyes to pop, we'll use the background remover. Click it and wait for it to process. And you can check if the background has been removed by dragging it around. Now increase the brush size and remove everything except the eyes. This is tedious, but it's worth it. When you're satisfied, click close. Now you can see the eyes pop, but let's enhance them even more. Click Edit, adjust the brightness to around 50, increase the sharpness to 8, and the clarity to 20. Now there's still a bit more cleanup needed, so use the background remover again to clean up any remaining edges. Zoom out and see if our thumbnail looks good. And when you're happy with it, this is the final output, a thumbnail that will actually get clicks. So that's how easy it is to use Canva. It is easier to use than Photoshop. It's also free. But with that being said, Photoshop will give you more control. So now we're gonna move over to the Photoshop section. All right, so now we're gonna do in Photoshop. I'm gonna start by recreating a successful thumbnail that I have had on my second channel, which is from the video, The Only YouTube Videos You Need to Make Millions. So first we're gonna replicate this thumbnail style in Photoshop because it actually converts, unlike the trash that most people are putting out there. So open Photoshop, click File, and click New to create a new document. Put in 1920 by 1080p, don't mess this up, it's literally the most basic step. Make sure Pixels is selected and set the resolution to 300, then click Create. Now we need to add a photo that doesn't look like garbage. So I found this one, it's perfect. But if your image is from a video and looks blurry, don't be lazy, upscale that thing with Gigapixel AI. And we just talked about Gigapixel AI in the Canva section. So let's drag our screenshot here and let the AI scale it for us to make it high definition. This is non-negotiable if you want people to actually click your stuff. Okay, now it's good. Export this image and save it. Let's go back to Photoshop, drag and drop our photo, hit enter. We want this to be bigger because tiny faces don't get clicks. Resize this by dragging it all the way up, then zoom out by clicking Alt and scrolling down. Hit enter when you're done. Now I think we can make this even bigger, something like this, and you can always adjust, and when you're satisfied, hit enter. Now for the text, we're going with my YouTube earnings because money gets clicks. So grab your type tool and type my, make it big, hold Alt or Option and make it bigger, spanning it across the thumbnail. Now add earnings as another text layer, resize it and position it below. Change the color to green because we're talking about money, and of course green triggers that psychological response. Next, we need the YouTube logo. So go to your browser, search YouTube logo and download it. Drag it into Photoshop and resize it. Position it between your text elements. Then group these text elements together with Ctrl-G and rename the group text. And this is so you don't have to move individual layers. Now we'll add that revenue box that makes people think they're getting insider information. So draw a rectangular shape and change the color to white, and then add estimated revenue text outside the shape. Then decrease the size, change the color to something that pops, and set the font to Roboto Medium in all caps. And this makes it look official, which increases your click-through rate. Now add your dollar amount, make it big enough to be impressive, but not so big it looks fake. Change the text color to black, and then set it to regular. Then select all these layers, group them with Ctrl-G, and rename the group earnings. Now for the secret weapon, add an arrow. People can't resist arrows. They literally force the eye to look where you want. So find an arrow image, download it, and position it in your thumbnail. I like this one. So make sure the arrow is behind the text by adjusting the layer order. This creates depth in your thumbnail. Now let's adjust the brightness of our photo. Go to Filter, click Camera, Raw Video, and increase the exposure to around 60. Then bump the contrast to 5, decrease blacks to -10, increase shadows to 10, and decrease highlights to around 85. Then increase clarity to 65, and when you're satisfied, click OK. Now the contrast between the text and the background isn't good enough here, so we need to darken the background to make the text pop. So use the gradient tool and draw from right to left. But we don't want to darken my face because that defeats the purpose. So click the layer mask, grab the brush tool, make sure the foreground is black, and then brush away the darkened area over the face. Last step, make the whites of the eyes pop. Now, this is super important. So create a new layer, grab your brush tool, make it smaller, and paint the whites of the eyes with white. Now in this case, it looks too intense, so decrease the opacity to around 40%. Then use the eraser tool with 0% hardness and clean up the edges. When you're satisfied, and I always recommend zooming out and zooming in, When you zoom out and you make the thumbnail very small, it's quite easy to tell if the composition is good and the letters are big enough and your face is big enough. Because remember, that should take up a significant amount of the thumbnail, and you should be able to see the whites of the eyes even when it is zoomed out and it's tiny. So this is your finished thumbnail that will actually get clicks. And there you have it. That's how we do it. Now, before you go, if you want to see another video, check out the video on how we helped Davis get to 100K per month. And we reveal his YouTube strategy by clicking right here.